It is a peculiar truth, and one that may unsettle you, that the very voice you consider to be your most intimate companion, the constant narrator of your life, the defender of your position, the curator of your pride is, in fact, not your friend. We call this voice the ego, and you have been taught to believe it is you. But I must tell you, it is merely a tenant in the vast estate of your soul, a tenant who has, through a long tenancy, come to believe it owns the property. It shouts to be heard, it postures to be seen, it builds fortresses of opinion and status to feel safe. And in this incessant noise, you have lost contact with the silent, majestic depths of your own being. This ego, which you so fiercely protect, is not here to comfort you. It is here to break you open. Its disappointments are your lessons. Its shattering is the beginning of your wholeness. There is a silence we carry within us, a place we do not speak of, a room we have sealed shut. We imagine it to be a tomb, a monument to some old failure, some past humiliation, some crack in our being that never quite healed. We walk through our days carefully, ensuring we do not disturb this sealed chamber, believing that if we are quiet enough, if we are successful enough, if we are pleasant enough, we can simply leave it be. But I tell you, that is not a tomb. It is a sanctuary waiting to be recognized. We have misnamed our wounds entirely. We call them weaknesses, flaws, scars, evidence of where we should not have been broken. But what if they are not evidence of damage, but rather the very markings of your unique architecture? What if the pain you so diligently avoid is not a lock, but a key consider for a moment, not the wound itself, but the magnificent, intricate, and ultimately fragile fortress you have built around it? You have constructed walls of ambition, moats of compliance, towers of intellectual certainty, all to protect this one tender spot. Your entire personality, in many of its most driven aspects, can be seen as a defense mechanism, a complex army stationed to guard a single sacred wound. And in doing so, you have mistaken the army for the nation, the guard for the treasure. The ego, in its frantic activity, is not the king, it is the royal guard, terrified of a threat that is no longer there, defending a treasure it has never seen. For the wound is not what you think it is. It is not merely the memory of a parent's indifference, a lover's betrayal, a public failure. That is only the event, the catalyst. The wound itself is an opening. It is a rupture in the carefully constructed fiction of your self-sufficiency, a crack in the vessel of your ego through which something vast and unknown can begin to flow. In nature, a broken branch is where new growth often emerges most vigorously. A forest fire clears the canopy, allowing sunlight to reach the forest floor and germinate seeds that have lain dormant for years. Your wound is precisely such a clearing. It is the place where the protective shell of your persona is thinnest, where you are most vulnerable, and therefore most real. The great tragedy is that we spend our lives trying to become invulnerable. We armor ourselves, we numb the ache, we distract the mind. We believe wholeness means being seamless without a crack or a flaw. But I propose to you that true wholeness is not the absence of the wound. It is the integration of it. It is the courage to stop building the fortress and to instead sit quietly within the sanctuary of that very broken place, to listen to what it has to teach you. For it holds the truth that your successful, polished self has forgotten. It holds your capacity for deep feeling, your empathy for others who suffer, your understanding of the fragility of life, and a profound rejection of the superficial when you dare to approach this place not with shame, but with curiosity. A miraculous alchemy begins. The wound ceases to be a source of passive suffering and becomes a source of active insight. The pain that once seemed a random punishment reveals itself as a purposeful guide, pointing you relentlessly toward the parts of yourself that demand attention, that crave acceptance, that need to be brought into the light of your consciousness. This is not a process of healing in the sense of erasing a scar. It is a process of initiation. The wound initiates you into the depths of your own soul. It forces you to develop resources you did not know you possessed: resilience, patience, a dark sense of humor, a bottomless compassion. These are not the gifts of a charmed life, they are the jewels forged in the depths of your struggle. So, I invite you to reconsider the geography of your own soul, to turn your attention inward, not with the critical eye of a surgeon seeking to cut away what is diseased, but with the reverence of an archaeologist uncovering a sacred site. Do not seek to fix yourself, seek to understand what this broken open place is trying to tell you. For it is in that very fissure, in that tender, aching human place, that the light of your true consciousness first begins to enter, and it is from that sacred ground that the authentic self, the whole self, begins to grow. The path to your true strength does not lead away from your deepest hurt, but directly through its silent, waiting gates. It is there, in that sanctuary, that you will find the blueprint to your becoming dot, and so we arrive at the great paradox that the very instrument we have been taught to distrust, to dismiss as fickle and unruly, is in fact the most ancient and sophisticated intelligence we possess. We have elevated the rational mind to the throne of the skull, believing its brittle logic to be the pinnacle of human evolution. We dissect, we analyze, we calculate, we build great towers of reason, and yet, for all our staggering intellect, we find ourselves more lost than ever, adrift in a sea of data without meaning, of connection without warmth. The mind is a magnificent servant, but a tyrannical ruler. It speaks in the language of yes and no, of right and wrong, of past and future. But there is another voice, a quieter, older, and far more profound, knowing that speaks in the language of the soul. It does not shout from the head, but whispers from the heart. Not the sentimental heart of greeting cards and fleeting passions, but the intelligent heart, the central organ of meaning, the compass of the psyche, the logic that transcends reason. This is not an anti-intellectual proposition. It is a plea for a deeper, more complete intellect. The cognitive mind operates by separation. It distinguishes, it categorizes, it draws boundaries. It says, I am here and you are there. This is its function. And it is necessary for navigating the external world. But the intelligent heart operates by connection. It perceives relationships, resonances, the invisible threads that bind the world into a coherent whole. It understands the subtle ecology of a relationship, the unspoken truth in a room, the rightness or wrongness of a path long before the logical mind can assemble its evidence. Have you ever met a person who was, by all rational accounts, perfect for you, and yet your entire being recoiled? Or have you undertaken a task that looked flawless on paper, yet felt deeply, unshakably wrong? This is the heart's intelligence, sending its urgent telegram through the fog of reason. It is your internal tuning fork, vibrating to the frequency of truth, not fact, that your ego mind, in its desperate quest for control and predictability, fears this heart logic above all else. For the heart does not traffic in guarantees. It offers no spreadsheets, no 5-year plans, no ironclad proofs. It speaks through feelings, through intuitions, through a gravitational pull toward one possibility and a deep resistance to another. It is the source of that inexplicable certainty that guides you toward a stranger who will become the most important person in your life, or away from a prosperity that would have cost you your soul. The mind seeks safety, the heart seeks authenticity, and very often these two are in direct opposition. We have been trained to override this inner guidance system. We call it impulsivity, we call it fear, we call it foolishness. When the heart whispers go and the mind screams stay, we have been taught to side with the screamer. We betray this deep knowing for the sake of security, for approval, for the path of least resistance. And with each betrayal, the voice grows quieter, the connection grows fainter, until we are left with only the frantic, circular chatter of the anxious mind, wondering why we feel so hollow, so disconnected from our own lives. We become brilliant strategists of a battle that means nothing to us, masters of a game we never wanted to play. To listen to the heart is therefore an act of immense courage. It requires you to tolerate uncertainty, to embrace paradox, to trust a knowledge that does not immediately present its credentials. It is to sit with a difficult decision and, instead of listing pros and cons, to quiet the mind and ask not what should I do, but who am I? Which path aligns with the deepest truth of my being? The answer will not come as a shouting command. It will arrive as a feeling, a sense of opening or a sense of contraction, a feeling of lightness or a weight in the chest. This is the vocabulary of the heart. Learning this language is the most critical education you will ever undertake. This heart logic is the very faculty that can make sense of the sanctuary of your wounds. The rational mind looks at a wound and sees only damage, a problem to be solved. But the intelligent heart perceives the same wound and understands its necessity, its place in the larger tapestry of your individuation. It feels the potential hidden within the pain. The heart does not seek to bypass the darkness. It knows that the seed of meaning is germinated there. It is the heart that gives you the courage to enter that sanctuary, not as a victim, but as a pilgrim seeking revelation. The mind alone would have you build higher walls. The heart invites you to kneel at the threshold and listen for the ultimate decisions of your life, whom to love, what work to dedicate yourself to, when to let go, when to persevere, will never be solvable by reason alone. These are matters of the soul, and the soul speaks not in the binary code of the machine, but in the poetic, symbolic, and deeply felt language of the heart. To reawaken this intelligence is to regain your native tongue, to remember the song your soul came here to sing. It is to navigate the world not by the brittle maps of convention, but by the living, magnetic pool of your own true north dot. And so we come to the great forge of the soul, the very crucible. We spend our lives attempting to avoid the searing, weighty, and inevitable presence of pressure. You have been taught to see it as an enemy, as a sign that something has gone terribly wrong. When the weight descends, when the world closes in, when demands exceed your perceived capacity, the ego sounds its alarm. It cries out for escape, for relief, for a return to the calm, flat waters of a life undisturbed. But I must tell you, this perspective is a profound error, a misreading of the very mechanics of creation. You are not a delicate figurine designed to be kept on a shelf, safe from the bumps of existence. You are, in your deepest essence, more akin to a piece of coal, a substance of potential formed in darkness, waiting for the very conditions you fear most to become what it is destined to be. The pressure you curse is not your ruin, it is the prerequisite of your radiance. It is the severe and necessary grace that compels your latent carbon to crystallize into diamond. Consider the alternative a life of perpetual comfort. It sounds like a paradise, does it not? Yet, such an existence is a sentence to eternal softness, without the friction that polishes, without the heat that tempers, without the weight that forces cohesion. The soul remains amorphous potential without form, a vague intention never made manifest. The ego, in its desperate quest for comfort, would have you believe that a life without pressure is a life of success. But I tell you, it is a life of quiet stagnation. It is in the secure, warm, undisturbed mud that things remain as they are. It is in the volcano, in the tectonic crush, that new continents are born. Your avoidance of pressure is an avoidance of your own becoming. You are refusing the initiation into a higher order of being taught, for pressure performs a ruthless and essential surgery. It strips away the inessential. When the weight is great enough, you cannot maintain the pretenses, the social masks, the carefully constructed personas that you present to the world. They become too heavy to carry. Under sufficient pressure, the ego's fortifications crack. The ambition you clung to for status, the relationship you maintained for convenience, the opinion you held for acceptance, all these secondary concerns fall away, revealed as the straw figures they are. What is left? Only what is real, only the core of you, naked and undeniable. It is a terrifying, yet ultimately liberating revelation. Pressure forces authenticity, for it is too costly to pretend under its immense weight. This is why the ego, the great pretender, fights it so vehemently. The ego is a structure of habit and history, a known quantity. Pressure is the agent of the unknown, the servant of the self, that greater, more whole entity you are meant to become. The ego's comfortable existence is threatened by the diamond's birth, for the birth of the new requires the death of the old. The heat you feel is not meant to destroy you, but to break the molecular bonds of your old identity, allowing them to reconfigure into a structure that is infinitely stronger, more brilliant, and far more valuable. Do not, therefore, pray for an easier life. That is the prayer of the unawakened coal, begging to remain in the soft, dark earth. Pray instead for the greater capacity to bear the heat and the weight. Pray for the consciousness to recognize the forge for what it is, not a punishment, but a sacred process. The anxieties that grip you, the responsibilities that loom, the conflicts that tear at your heart, these are not meaningless sufferings. They are the specific, personalized conditions required for your unique transformation. The universe is not random, its application of pressure, it is precise. It applies heat exactly where you are most rigid so that you may become flexible. It applies weight exactly where you are most fragmented so that you may become whole. This is the privilege that is so easily mistaken for a curse. It is the invitation to participate consciously in your own creation, to stand in the center of the storm and say, "Do your work in me," to feel the cracking of your old shell and understand it not as breaking, but as the opening of a new form. This is where the intelligent heart finds its ultimate purpose. It is the heart that can feel the meaning within the pain, that can trust the process even when the mind screams in terror. It is the heart that whispers, "This too is part of the journey," when the ego declares it a catastrophic detour. The sanctuary of your wounds is the very site where this pressure is most intensely focused, and it is through the logic of the heart that you can endure its transformative fire. You are not a victim of your circumstances. You are a participant in your own alchemy. The pressure is not here to crush you. It is here to compress you into your truest, most indestructible form. It is the severe mercy that will not let you remain less than you are, dot, and now we must turn our attention to that restless, aching vibration within you, that quiet but persistent voice of dissatisfaction, which you have likely been taught to suppress, to medicate, to silence as though it were a malfunction. You feel it in the stillness after an achievement, a whisper that says, "This is not enough." You sense it in the comfort of a routine that has become a cage, a gravitational pull towards something you cannot name. The world calls this feeling ingratitude. It pathologizes it as anxiety. It dismisses it as a failure to be present. But I tell you, this feeling is none of these things. This divine discontent is the soul's imperative to grow. It is the most reliable compass you possess, and its needle is perpetually, mercifully pointed away from the comfortable and toward the meaningful. You see, the ego seeks equilibrium. It desires a pleasant, predictable stasis where it can reign supreme, untroubled by mystery or demand. It wants to build a house and live in it forever. But the soul, your true and ancient self, is a dynamic, living process. It is not a structure, but a flow. It is not a noun, but a verb. And for a process to live, it must move. For a flow to continue, it must find new pathways. This discontent is the energy of that movement. It is the evolutionary impulse itself, lodged in the core of your being, ensuring you do not fossilize in a form that has become too small for you. The peace you crave is not the silence of the cemetery, but the vibrant, humming equilibrium of a forest, a system teeming with life, death, and rebirth, constantly in flux, yet perfectly itself. When you numb this feeling, when you distract yourself from its urgent tug, you are not finding peace. You are committing a subtle form of self-betrayal. You are refusing the call to your own next chapter. Think of a seed snug in the dark, damp soil. It is comfortable, it is safe, but within it stirs a divine discontent, a genetic memory of the sun, a longing for height and leaf. To remain a seed is to deny its destiny. The pressure to break its shell is not a cruelty, it is a summons to become a tree. Your discontent is that very same pressure. It is the cracking of your own shell. This is why the achievements of the ego so often taste of ashes. You climb the mountain you were told to climb. You plant your flag at the summit, and you look around only to find yourself on the wrong mountain altogether. The goal was not the territory. It was the terrain your soul needed to cross to develop the strength for the next, more authentic journey. The divine discontent is what prevents you from setting up a permanent camp on that false summit. It is the wind that howls, making your stay there so unbearable that you are forced to descend and begin the true, more dangerous and more rewarding ascent, the one mapped by your own heart. This feeling is the necessary counterpart to the privilege of pressure. The pressure forges you, but the discontent directs you. It is the intelligence within the heat guiding the transformation. It whispers of a potential that is not yet actual, a wholeness that is not yet realized. It makes you allergic to the inauthentic. It is the source of that profound homesickness you feel for a place you have never visited, a place which is, in fact, your own future self. Do not mistake this for a call to reckless abandon. This is not the voice of a petulant child demanding novelty. It is the deep, resonant voice of your own destiny, asking you to honor the life that is straining to be lived through you. It asks you to bring the fullness of your attention to the very source of the ache. Where exactly does the feeling reside? What situation, what relationship, what aspect of your life gives it voice? Your divine discontent is not a vague complaint, it is a precise diagnostic tool. It highlights the specific areas where your current form is constricting your spirit, dot, to listen to it is to engage in the most critical dialogue of your life. It requires you to ask, not how can I make this feeling go away, but what is this feeling trying to create asterisk in me? What dormant quality is it trying to awaken? What frontier is it compelling me to explore? This is how you partner with your own evolution. This is how the cold consents to the pressure, how the heart trusts its own logic, how the wound opens itself to become a sanctuary. Your restlessness is not a flaw in your design, it is the engine of your destiny, and it will not cease its urging until you have become everything you are meant to be. And so we arrive at the most subtle and misunderstood of all the soul's faculties, the capacity to read the text of your own existence. You move through your life believing it to be a series of random events, a chaotic procession of accidents and intentions, some fortunate, some tragic. The ego, in its linear arrogance, sees only cause and effect. It keeps a ledger of wins and losses, and it views coincidence as mere statistical noise, the meaningless static between the stations of purposeful action. But what if this is a profound failure of perception? What if the universe is not silent, but is in a constant state of speech? What if your life is not a random story, but a text woven with intention, and your task is to learn to read the language in which it is written? There exists a grammar of destiny, a syntax of meaning hidden within the seemingly random collisions of your inner and outer worlds. This is not the simplistic language of omens or fortune cookie prophecies. It is a deeper, more poetic logic, the logic of meaningful coincidence, of what I have termed synchronicity. It is the sudden, unexplained arrival of a person who articulates the very thought taking shape in your own mind. It is the book that falls open to the precise paragraph that answers a question you have not yet spoken aloud. It is the recurring symbol in a dream, then on a street sign, then in a conversation, a pattern that begins to feel less like chance and more like a persistent tap on the shoulder from an unseen guide. These are not supernatural interventions. They are the natural expression of a unified psyche and world, a resonance between the inner reality of the soul and the outer reality of events. When the student is ready, the teacher appears not because of magic, but because a profound inner readiness makes one suddenly capable of seeing the teacher who was always there. Your ego mind, terrified of this nonlinear reality, will immediately demand proof. It will seek to dismiss the connecting thread as fantasy, to reduce the meaningful pattern to a mere accident. It does this because to accept this grammar is to surrender its role as the sole author of your life. It is to admit that a larger, more intelligent pattern is at work, a pattern in which your conscious will is a participant, but not the sole director. This can feel like a loss of control, but in truth, it is an invitation into a far richer collaboration. It is the difference between a single musician practicing alone and that same musician hearing the first notes of a vast, complex symphony and realizing they have a part to play within it. To learn this grammar, you must shift your mode of attention from analysis to appreciation. You must become a poet of your own experience, listening for the rhymes and rhythms that echo between your inner state and your outer circumstances. When you are gripped by a powerful emotion or a recurring dream, take note. Then look outward. What happens in your environment that seems to mirror this inner theme? When you are faced with a baffling obstacle, ask not only how do I solve this, but also what is this obstacle asterisk saying asterisk? What quality in me is it forcing me to develop? What path is it blocking? And what alternative path might it be revealing? The closed door is not just a barrier, it is a signpost. The unexpected meeting is not just an interruption, it is a sentence in the narrative. This is where the intelligent heart becomes your essential translator. The rational mind, with its dictionaries and rule books, is useless here. It will try to dissect the coincidence and kill its meaning. But the heart, which perceives through resonance and connection, can feel the truth of the pattern. It feels the asterisk, click asterisk of a meaningful connection, a rightness that transcends logical explanation. This heartfelt recognition is the primary datum of this secret language. It is a knowing, not a thinking. Your divine discontent is often the engine that sets these synchronistic events into motion. The soul, longing for its next expression, begins to hum at a certain frequency, and this inner vibration attracts or unveils corresponding frequencies in the outer world. The pressure you experience is often the friction required to make you take notice, to sand your smooth consciousness rough enough for these patterns to gain traction and become visible. The entire process of individuation is a journey in literacy, a long, patient apprenticeship in learning to read the hidden text of your own becoming. The signs are not written in the stars for the lazy to find without effort. They are woven into the fabric of your daily life, visible only to the one who has learned to look with a certain quality of soul, who has cultivated the humility to listen and the courage to follow the trail of meaning, even when it leads away from the well-lit path of convention. The grammar is subtle, the vocabulary vast, but the first lesson is always the same: to pay attention with a quiet and receptive heart to the eerie, beautiful, and perfectly timed whispers that there is to meet you when you are truly on your path. And this brings us to the most counterintuitive courage of all, the one that the modern world, with its cult of perfection and its obsession with curated finality, understands least. You are taught from the beginning that to be whole is to be complete, to be finished, to have all the answers, and to have sealed all the cracks. You present to the world and to yourself a carefully edited manuscript, hoping to conceal the rough drafts, the scratched out sentences, the glaring plot holes that you fear are the true story of your life. But I tell you, this pursuit of completeness is a prison. It is the ego's final, most sophisticated defense against the messy, vital, and uncontrollable process of actually living. The most radical and necessary courage you can muster is not the courage to become perfect, but the courage to be incomplete. Consider the fundamental nature of life itself. Is a budding flower complete? Is a flowing river? Is a child? Their beauty, their power, their very essence lies in their becoming, not in their being. To be complete is to be static, a monument in a museum, something to be admired from a distance, but no longer touched by the transformative forces of growth and decay. The ego desires this monument status desperately. It wants the biography written, the case closed, the identity cemented. But the soul, your true self, is a verb in perpetual conjugation. It is a story being written, and a good story requires uncertainty, development, and the constant possibility of surprise. To claim completeness is to declare to the universe, I have nothing more to learn, which is the height of arrogance and the death of the soul, your fragility, your uncertainties, your unanswered questions. These are not failings. They are the very apertures through which the world enters you and through which you enter the world. A sealed vessel holds only what is already inside. It is a tomb for a preserved past, but a vessel with cracks, with pores, with an open rim. That is a cup that can receive new wine. That is a hand that can be held. That is a mind that can be changed, and a heart that can be broken open. The pressure you experience so acutely often arises from the violent tension between your ego's desire to be a sealed vessel and your soul's need to be an open one. The divine discontent is the sound of your own being straining against the lid you have clamped upon it. This is why the journey through the sanctuary of your wounds and the apprenticeship to the grammar of destiny require this courage above all. To enter your wounds, you must admit you are wounded. To read the signs, you must admit you are lost and in need of direction. This requires a profound humility, a voluntary shedding of the armor of knowing. It is to stand before the vast mystery of your own psyche and say, I do not know who I am, but I am willing to find out. This is not a confession of weakness. It is a declaration of faith in a process larger than your present understanding. It is the soil of all true growth. The person who believes they are complete is forever defending a fortress. The person who embraces their incompleteness is forever exploring a frontier. The former lives in the anxiety of being found out. The latter lives in the excitement of discovery. Your so-called flaws, the parts of yourself that don't fit your own narrative, the contradictory impulses that shame you, these are not mistakes to be eradicated. They are the wild, untamed, and most fertile territories of your being. They are the source of your unique creativity, your unexpected compassion, your capacity to understand the struggles of others. To integrate your shadow is not to eliminate it, but to welcome it as a vital part of your incomplete and thus living totality. So you must learn to wear your incompleteness not as a shameful secret, but as the mantle of your humanity. It is the space within you reserved for the future. It is the open door through which new love, new insight, and new versions of yourself can enter. To be a work in progress is to be alive in the deepest sense, partnered with the universe itself in the great and ongoing act of your creation. The goal is not to arrive at a destination called wholeness, but to engage so fully in the journey that your wholeness is revealed as a dynamic and ever-unfolding process, not a static state. Your completeness lies not in having no more cracks, but in how lovingly you attend to the light that shines through them. And so we come to the final, the most delicate, and the most rewarding of all the great works, the integration of that which you have been taught to deny, to repress, to cast into the outer darkness of your own being. We have spoken of the shadow, that cellar of the soul where we lock away what we deem unacceptable, but we must now go further to understand that this is not a static dungeon, but a living, breathing chorus of disowned voices. You have been taught to see this inner multiplicity as a curse, a sign of a fractured mind. You strive for a singular, pure note, a clean and simple melody for your life. But I tell you, the soul is not a soloist, it is an entire orchestra. And the greatest music, the most profound and moving harmony, emerges not from silencing the darker, deeper instruments, but from inviting them to play their part. This is the Symphony of Shadows, the difficult, glorious art of integrating the music of your darker notes. Think of your psyche as a grand composition. The ego wishes to be the sole conductor, allowing only the bright, socially acceptable instruments to be heard: the violin of your intellect, the flute of your charm, the steady drum of your duty. But what of the haunting bassoon of your grief, the disruptive clash of cymbals that is your rage, the mysterious, atonal melody of your most peculiar desires? You have tried to silence these, to have the musicians thrown from the hall. Yet a symphony without bass, without percussion, without depth and contrast is thin, sentimental, and lacking in truth. It has no weight, no gravity, no capacity to express the full spectrum of human experience. Your life, when you play only the bright notes, becomes a pleasant but ultimately forgettable tune. It is in the integration of the dissonance that the true masterpiece is born. This is the practical culmination of all we have discussed. The courage to be incomplete is what allows you to finally open the door to the rehearsal room where these shadow musicians have been waiting, practicing in secret for decades. The divine discontent is the composer's yearning for a more complex and authentic score. The pressure you experience is often the sound of these repressed energies straining against the door, demanding to be heard. And the intelligent heart, it is the only conductor capable of this work. The rational mind, with its demand for order and pleasantness, will always favor the melody and discard the dissonance. But the heart perceives the beauty in the tragic, the truth in the angry, the necessity in the strange. It can hear the sorrow within the rage and the love within the grief. To integrate your shadow is not to become a darker person. It is to become a more real one. It is to reclaim the tremendous energy you have wasted in keeping these parts of yourself locked away. The rage you deny does not disappear. It becomes passive aggression, a critical inner voice, or a slow-burning resentment that poisons your relationships. The grief you refuse to feel becomes a permanent numbness, an inability to experience joy fully. The wild, instinctual desires you repress become a dullness of spirit, a sense of being a spectator in your own life. When you welcome these aspects, you are not inviting chaos. You are inviting power, authenticity, and a staggering new depth of compassion. You can only truly understand the shadows in others when you have made peace with your own. This is not an act of psychological analysis, but of artistic hospitality. You do not overcome your shadow, you listen to it. You ask the anger what it is protecting. You ask the grief what it has loved so deeply. You ask the fear what it desires to keep safe. These darker notes are not your enemies. They are loyal, if misunderstood, defenders of your deepest vulnerabilities. They have a wisdom that your polished ego has long forgotten. To bring them into the light of your consciousness is not to let them run the concert, but to give them their rightful place in the ensemble. The anger, when heard and channeled, becomes the fierce and unwavering protector of your boundaries. The grief becomes a deep well of empathy for all who suffer. The fear becomes a sharpened intuition guiding you away from true danger. The goal then is a symphony, not a solo. It is a life rich with the full range of human emotion and experience, where nothing is wasted and every part of you is enlisted in the great work of being alive. You will no longer be at war with yourself. You will be a complex, sometimes turbulent, but breathtakingly coherent whole. The melody of your conscious life will be supported, challenged, and deepened by the harmony and rhythm of all that you are. This is the final step in learning the grammar of your own destiny, to read the music of your soul in all its light and shadow, and to finally, courageously allow it to be played out. So now you stand at the threshold, not of a new theory, but of a new life. You have seen that the wound is not a tomb, but a sanctuary, the heart not a fool, but a sage, the pressure not a curse, but a privilege. You have felt the pull of your divine discontent and learned to read the hidden grammar of your destiny. You have found the courage to remain incomplete and begun to hear the symphony within your own shadows. Do not simply listen to these words and return to the same small room of your former self. The world does not need more half-lived lives, more polished personas, more comfortable ghosts. It needs souls who have dared to descend into their own depths and returned, bearing the gold of their authentic being. Go now into your world, but go differently. Carry this knowledge not in your mind, but in your bones. When you feel the pressure, remember the coal becoming diamond. When you hear the whisper of discontent, recognize it as the call of your soul. When you encounter your shadow, do not flinch, invite it to play its part in your magnificent, unruly, and utterly unique symphony. The path to wholeness is before you. Walk it with the courage of one who knows that every step, even the stumbling ones, is part of the dance. You are not broken, you are becoming, and in that becoming you are and always will be unstoppable. Thank you and good luck on the most important journey you will ever take, the journey back to your true self.